Hello and welcome. This is going to be part one of a video where we go over some Blender basics. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments. A lot of my previous videos have not gone over basics. They're more for specific things. So we're going to start from scratch here. And we're also going to talk about tips and tricks. And we're also going to look at some of the things that make Blender a great art tool. And it's important to remember that art is different than some of the technical aspects you might need to learn to make stuff. When you first open up Blender, you get a splash screen that lets you set a few things by default. The major thing is, what are you going to select things with? Right click, left click. I use the right click. Don't worry if you have lost that screen, like if you've closed the program, reopened, it'll that pop-up won't be there again. So if that is the case, all you have to do is go here to edit preferences and key map. So here we can see I have a right for select with mouse button, and my space bar brings up search. Now, that's my personal preference. You can do what you like. Tools and play are good options depending on what you're trying to do. And there's a few other options, and you can search through options if there are other things you've decided you want to change. Right now I have my resolution scaled up a little bit for this video, but besides that, I'm using the just standard options. In addition to screencast keys, which I'm going to turn on so that everybody can see what I am clicking on. Like I said before, I have spacebar open up this search bar, this little search box. And if you type in something like add camera, for instance, there it is, add camera. So we see Shift A is for adding things. So if you need shortcut keys, a great way to find them is using search, but also you can just search and, do an add, and then you've added whatever it is to your scene. So we're not going to delete the cube. All right. Once you're actually ready to get started, you're going to have a lot of trouble navigating if you've not done like 3D navigation before. So it's just going to take a lot of practice to kind of move around in Blender. All right, so the middle mouse button will orbit around. If you hold it down, you can orbit around the screen, orbit around the 3D space. Holding down Shift lets us pan. Another way to look around and get a view of the scene is with the number pad. And when using the number pad 1 brings you to a front view, and 3 brings you to a side view. 7 is a top view, and then bottom is 9. Actually looks like it toggles between. So the numpad is really useful because you can use like 1 to get a front view, and then you hold Control 1, it'll give you the back, and you can see the text up here in the upper left, what view you are currently in. So if I hit 3, we're going to be on the right. If I hit Control plus numpad 3, we get the left view. And you can see it says orthographic, and everything right now lines up. So orthographic view is different than perspective. So if I hit 5 on the number pad, you can see things change. This is perspective view, where all the lines are acting like they would if you were looking through a camera. Just all the lines go into the background. They're getting smaller as they go. And here we can see orthographic view, everything is parallel. And this can be very useful. Let's go back into front view. So here we can see this is like evenly sized and everything. And if I duplicate this, we'll go over that later on. If I duplicate this, it can be a little confusing because now these things look like they're basically the same size, but if I go back into perspective, you can see, okay, they are the same size, but one of them is bigger because it's closer to our viewport. So you'll have to get used to switching between these modes because it can be a little bit confusing. If you don't have a number pad, you can emulate the numpad. Now keys 1 through 0 on my keyboard will work the same way. I don't need to do that, so I'm not going to keep that setting. And one more note on navigation. So I don't remember the shortcut, but I can use the search option. And if I type in walk, you can see here view navigation. So there's no shortcut for this. But walk navigation, if I click on that, I can now move with WASD. And using the scroll wheel, I can increase and decrease the speed. There's also fly. And you can see the options down at the bottom of the screen. So Alt precision mode, got acceleration options. But yeah, walk and fly, really useful if you're used to moving around a 3D scene like that. And then escape gets you out of those modes. Another thing to think about when you are scrolling is that the closer you get to like the more zoomed in you get, the slower you go. And you get faster as you get farther away. And this can be a telling sign of whether or not you are working with a really, really tiny model on accident or something. The grid is cut into units of like 1 meter units, and you can change that. We're not going to do that right now. So another navigation thing is if we hit numpad 0, that will bring us into our camera. Now this is the active camera. You can make multiple cameras. Actually, let's Shift D will duplicate this camera, put it over here, and I'm still going to this one camera. So if I want to go to this camera on the left, I can hit Control 0 on the numpad, and now I'm in this one. This is now the default. We can switch back with another Control 0. There we go. That can be useful if you are rendering multiple angles of the same thing. So the camera will be what we use to render images. You're probably going to be wanting to move it. And that brings us to kind of the next most important thing to learn in Blender, which is how to move stuff. There are controls here on the left side for moving objects. And so if I select the red, that moves things on the X-axis, green on the Y-axis, and you can see these numbers on this. This panel on the right is the context-based menu, so it changes depending on what you've selected. A lot of stuff in Blender is context-specific, so also can rotate things, so that's rotating on Z, this is rotating it on Y. And then we can scale. I don't use these really. I like to use, this is a combination of all of them. I like to use the shortcut keys. So G is for moving, which was very confusing when I first started out. I don't know why, didn't really like G, but you do this enough times, you will remember. G moves things. R rotates. R times 2 will change the way that things rotate. One's related to our view, one is just related to how the mouse is moving. And then S for scale. And if you noticed, this will actually cause sort of an issue though. What if we just want to move things like this? Can we do that with the shortcut key? Oh yeah, if you want to move something just on the x-axis, you can hit X or Z or Y, and you can do the same for everything else. This actually brings up another point. When you're going through in other parts of the program, like the UV editor and stuff, using X, Y, Z and G to move things around is universal. So if I have like some keys on this timeline, you can move them by hitting G as well, or just dragging them at that point. But yeah, so we'll get into that a little bit more later. So everything to do with moving things around, that has to do with object mode. Now you can see this option right here, upper left, object mode. It's only object mode. And then if I select this cube with a right click, left click if you've changed it, I get more options. Now we're gonna focus mainly on edit mode and object mode for this video. So what's the difference here? Edit mode allows us to edit the actual object, which is constructed out of these 6 different sides. These are faces I'm selecting. So when you first go into edit mode, you're in vertex selection mode. So these are points, and just like in object mode, you can use the different keys. Scale won't do anything because these are just vertexes. And then if I use the number keys, I can switch to edge mode and face mode. So this allows us to change how we select things. Selecting stuff in Blender, I think, has improved a lot, but you still might have some trouble. You still might have some trouble selecting what you want. But as situations change, there's different things you can do. So this is also going to take some getting used to. So if I hit 3, I can now select what's known as a face. I can move this, so let's just make a weird object. Now you can use tab to swap between edit and object mode. So tab is very useful, and Control tab actually brings up this little menu, which lets you select from different options as well. All right, let's take what we've learned so far and apply it. I've started with a new general scene here in Blender, and I'm actually gonna click left and drag to select everything. If I right click, I can deselect and just use A to select everything. Delete, give us a clean slate. Using the numpad to get us into a forward perspective, I have a folder open here with an image. I'm gonna drag the image in. This gives us a reference to work off of. Now, if I move around, the reference disappears. That is because if we go over here while we've got this selected, we want perspective to be checked as well, so we can see this image regardless of our camera or viewport mode. All right, so I'm just gonna move this over here, and we're just gonna make a kind of approximation of the shapes here using cubes. And later we will come back to this and refine it. So there's kind of this shape here. I'm gonna stay in object mode. There's kind of this shape here on the bottom of the tank, which is like about like that maybe. Duplicate with Shift D, and then we're gonna move this cube. And then let's see, there's kind of this shape right here, which is back, right. And we're just creating like a boxy layout. It can be pretty rough. Here's this part here. And let's do a sneak peek of a little bit more of an advanced thing that you'll be using a lot. I guess it's not advanced, but I've duplicated this here, this cube, and turned it into what will be the treads. And I want to go over here to modifiers, and we're going to use a modifier. Okay, this is the mirror modifier. And if right now, this object is mirrored, but it's mirrored based off of the central point right here. So we can't really tell. Here, if I move it in edit mode, then you can see, oh, it's mirrored. So one thing I can do is select a mirror object. I'm going to select this cube here, and now the mirror is happening around the center of this object here, which is in the center of our scene. If I move this, it affects that. All right, so there you go. Use mirror, and we've got that on both sides. So later when we change this, we can change it on both sides. And we're actually going to change right now. This doesn't look quite right. All right, there we go. And we'll get the bit here. Actually, so what we've done here is created a sort of mock-up for a tank, just using cubes, very basically. And actually, let's just for the sake of it, we'll add a cylinder here. Alt G, because I moved the cursor, we'll move it back to the 0, 0 location, Alt G. I'm gonna rotate it X90. This shape obviously makes more sense here. There you go. Very crappy tank. Now, how do we make it better? Well, that's when we need to get into edit mode. All right, so this is where the fun begins. Once you kind of get used to doing various movements and rotations and scaling and putting things everywhere in Blender, it's time to get more into modeling. So let's delete everything and add a cube. I went again to new, general for the general default setup. And now we have a cube. Let's dive into edit mode. So again, edit mode here. We can also tab or shift or control tab to go to different different modes. So edit mode, let's say we want more cube. We want a rectangle. Well, either we select this entire face one at a time with shift select or with a left click drag, or go to 3, select the face, and then we can do what is called an extrude. An extrude is E. All right, let me turn this off. E right here. All right, we know this cube here is 2 units, so if I hit 2, it'll extrude this by 2. Now we have 1 cube, or 1 kind of rectangle. Oops, I messed up. Let's go back. All right, E2. All right, what I had done there, and I'm leaving this in, is I had extruded, then I extruded again, which created extra stuff here. So be mindful of that. There we go. There should be nothing in between here. Okay, so now we have this cube or rectangle or square prism, I suppose you'd call it. Anyway, we can extrude here. We can extrude anything. So if I go back to vertex mode, which is 1 on the keyboard, or right here in the upper left, I can extrude this. I can extrude all of these points. And you may say, what's the point of that? That doesn't show up actually when you render images and stuff. Well, so if I select both of these, I can click M and merge at last selected. And if I select all of these with Alt right click and click F, that creates a face. And it's really crappy because it has more than 4 vertexes, which is something we're going to have to get into when we talk about low poly and some more stuff. Let's delete this. Delete face. All right. Now, if I delete this face here, it's deleted, and then we have kind of this opening into this. As an aside, if I was deleting the vertexes here in this menu, it would delete the surrounding faces as well that connect to that. All right, so we can kind of extrude and create these weird shapes, and we can move using G or just the controls here that we have access to. We can manipulate any of these elements. What are some other things we can do? Well, if I click Alt E, we actually get an extrude menu, and we can do something called individual faces. What's that? So if I select multiple faces here and hit E, it extrudes like this. And if I hide these faces, you can see this is what's created, right? Well, what if I didn't want to do that? Well, Alt E, extrude individual faces. Now we've got these two extruding this way along their normals. And what the normal is basically, see this red line here? For this face here, that is the direction it happens to be going. Let's go up here, and this little menu here, mesh edit mode overlays. This shows us normal directions, all right? And so for this one here, it's facing this green line. And if I rotate this, then it's facing a different direction. So that is the direction of each face. So if I rotate this a bunch, now this is the normal. And anytime you extrude, we extrude along normal. So if I select all of these with A and extrude individual faces, we get this. Now, what if I wanted instead to make like a little detail, like a little, like this, like this kind of thing? Well, easier way to do that than extruding actually would be to start with an inset. creates extra geometry, then we can extrude inward here. All right, now let's say we want to kind of round the corners of this cube. Well, if I select one of these edges, you can do it that way, do it shift, let's go 2 and select this. We can, if we hit Control B, bevel this edge here. If we select both of these, we can bevel them at the same time. If we select the whole face, then every edge will be beveled. Bevel is very useful. If I bevel again and I use a scroll wheel, I can increase the kind of dimension and the amount of faces created with the bevel. So I can like, scale E, and go this, and scale this in, and then go, woo, so much detail so quickly, right? And then we can extrude individual faces. Yeah, so there are many important things to go over actually that I am ignoring. Let's go back to a cube. So this cube is made up of quads. Quads are 1, 2, 3, 4 vertexes making up a face. All right, well, if I create another thing here, so like how would I even make this? Let's see, if I do, like, let's see, I use the knife tool here. Then edge slide is a movement for a vertex along a edge. If I hit G twice, what I'm doing here is something bad. So merge by distance, that got rid of that extra line. So now I have an n-gon, which is more than 4, right? N-gons are bad. So why is this bad? Well, if you look at this, this shape doesn't know what it is. And as you kind of look around, you can kind of tell it's like, what is going on here? Because it's like, well, is the line here supposed to go to where, like, where is it supposed to go? How do we fix this sort of situation? Because here, see, like, what is this shape? Well, you can use a knife tool and cut this, and then we get or triangle, it's 3 points, and 1, 2, 3, 4, another quad. And then of course these are still having issues here. This is having an issue here. We could use another knife tool here. And tries are okay. Tries are fine. You want to usually keep with quads. If you're doing low poly, you're gonna make a lot of tries. But let's go back here to when it's like this, and actually how I would fix this particular thing is not with that. Knife tool, sorry. K is for knife tool. If I click on one of the vertexes, then click on another, hit space, there we go. All right, so we still have an n-gon problem here. So, and one of the issues is if we do Control R. So if we can do Control R, we can do what's called a loop cut. And you can see right here, this cut goes all the way around. But I can't do it here because the geometry is all wonky. If this was not here, let's see, dissolve vertex. That, clean that up. We can do this all day long. So this also would affect the bevel. Potentially, things can get really weird. So if I do a loop cut here, actually, let's say we actually do want this kind of shape. There we go. The second video in this is probably going to be dedicated to edit mode and the different render options. So these are just some of the basics. Select things using the different modes, switch to the different modes using 1, 2, 3, and you can move things. You can do Control R with a scroll wheel to create multiple cuts. Alt plus right click. We can select things that are in a loop. So that selects this whole thing. Bevel is for beveling. Again, we have the scroll wheel. We can move things and lock using our XYZ. We can rotate and lock using our XYZ. And we can lock off one of the rotations or lock off one of the movements. I don't want this to move height-wise. I just want it to move everything else. So Shift Z after moving. So these are kind of the important things. And I'm sorry if this is a bit rambly, but let's look at a practical example and apply some of these techniques, and it'll maybe be a little clearer. And then remember, please, if you have any specific questions that you want covered in the next video, this is kind of a brief overview of edit mode, I'd say. So yeah, let's look at the practical example. Back with our tank, what are some changes we can do? Well, you can see this here. Oops. Using the annotation. Just make this visible. Here we go. So we can see this shape here. How do we recreate that here? Well, let's tab into edit mode and push 2. Gets us into edge select. We can do this, Control B to bevel, or we could do this, Control R to make a loop cut, and then move this here. I'm gonna do a loop cut because if we look at this, if I just do the bevel, this creates a shape here, which is kind of awkward. It prevents us from making full loop cuts here, right? So if I do this, Control R, GG slides this. Now this gives us better geometry. All right, Alt H to show everything we've hidden. Okay, so that's a good step in the right direction. Now let's work on the treads a little because they are sticking out like a sore thumb here as something we can change. So let's bevel this, but we'll use the scroll wheel to increase our bevel to about here. And now if we do the bottom, drag out here, and then select here, decreasing and increasing the amount. Okay, there we go. I'll hide this again. Okay, this is looking better. Now this shape here, from this photo, we can kind of determine that the shape we need here, let's go 3, scale this on the x-axis, is a little bit more like this. And this is more of a almost cylinder sphere. So let's do a loop cut here. And let's just drag this down. We're gonna Alt right click to select this, bevel. And let's just scale this on the Z, move this up. And let's just do another bevel. No, let's not do that. Move this down. And for the cylinder, let's make a loop cut, bring it over here. 3, Alt click, scale, Shift Y. Oops. Actually, let's extrude E, scale Shift Y. This is not really in the photo, but this is more of like what we expect to see for a tank. So we can do what we want. I'm gonna scale this in and extrude in. And then let's just make a few adjustments here. You can see there's maybe a bit of a difference with this overhanging, actually. So select both of these, scale X. There's kind of an overhang, and then this. Let's, so we need to make this jut out. And if we just move these, that's not gonna work. And if we extrude, it's not gonna work. We can extrude this. If we hit Alt E, we can extrude manifold. And that kind of cuts in the way we want here, but it doesn't really work because it's creating this extra geometry. So let's just move this whole thing back. Easiest thing to do, move this whole thing back, extrude Y to lock it into Y. And then this kind of reveals, okay, this here needs to be scaled. And if we select this, we can scale this whole section. Of course, if we just done things a little differently with how we scaled our loop cuts, this would be different, but this works just fine. You can, of course, Alt click to select everything. There we go. Let's insert or inset and extrude here, and we have our mirror modifier, so that works on both sides. We'll just do that for now. And let's just add a tiny little detail here. And maybe hide this. Make all our tiny little adjustments here. Okay, so here we have a little simple tank. It's looking a little better. Bevel this, bevel this, bevel that. All right. And just for the heck of it, let's add some of these wheels. And then I can kind of tell this needs to be a little different here. So I'm gonna make a loop cut and move this out. And then it's kind of weird doing that. So let's move it out and then do a bevel that looks better. Okay, move this. Now, there's a bunch of detail in here, and if we just want to kind of make the impression of the detail, we can just add a block here, right? Add a block here, and let's move it. And let's make some cuts here. And for the sake of simplicity, kind of make it look as if there is more detail here. And maybe this will look crappy, but that's okay because we can just start over. Let's actually make this have some teeth. And to do that, I'm gonna select all of these faces and use search bar, checker deselect. If we extrude, Alt E, extrude along normals. And then let's go up here to individual origins. And, oops, scale 0. This kind of gives us some teeth here. Let's just delete that. Kind of scale this. Excluding the, keep hitting the wrong thing, excluding the x-axis, okay. And then actually, oops. And then let's just add some stuff here and here. Okay. And we can just keep adding forever. And at some point we have to think, well, what is the purpose of this? Is it to make an image? Is it to put in a game? Because then that changes how we deal with some of this. But for now, we've kind of created some detail. Okay, there we go. And this can actually go in more. And then adding detail in one area will often make another area look a little less detailed. So let's just duplicate this, extrude. We'll add some nonsense details that, what are these? I don't know. I don't know how this works. It's a tank. Make these kind of offset. We can do this. And then we can be like, all right, there's another thingy. We'll add some panels here. of an unknown purpose. Yeah. And then, of course, all of this could be duplicated and put on the other side, or we can select this last and hit Control J, join, and now this is all one object, which we probably don't want, but we could do that. All right, so now that's a little bit of a tank. Yeah, it's nice. Let's go Object, Auto Smooth. That'll smooth out the treads. Smooth. Auto Smooth maintains that this is flat, so if I just go Shade Smooth, it looks weird. There we go. I don't know if we want this to be Auto Smooth, but yeah, it looks a little better. Now let's kick this up a little bit, and for the kind of ending of this video, we're going to add a camera here. All right, Shift A, we can look through here, get a camera, and if I hit Control Alt 0 on the numpad, I can get the camera to be where I have the viewport. Let's just move out a little bit. Put this here, and then let's go to this other viewport. Get the sun in here, rotate a sun object right like that. And let's go over here to where we have this render properties. It's the little camera. Ray tracing, which basically is simulating how the light moves around. We are in Eevee render engine. If we go to cycles, it looks kind of different, and we'll deal with all of that later. Right now, just kind of to make this look better, we're going to change those settings for ray trace and hit F12, which is render. You can also go to render image, which will show you what the shortcut key is if you are on a different system. So here we go. A tank. Thank you very much. I'll see you in the next video, and please leave any comments you have down below on anything that was confusing or you'd like to go over again. And then also, this is bothering me. That looks slightly better. Okay, there we go. Yeah.